starts with you, only you. A cosmic dance, the truth so true. From the ether to the earthly plane, all you seek, you can attain. The quantum flow, the light you hold, creates the story that will unfold. Every thought and step you make, the universe is yours to take. It starts with you, the mirror's hue, infinite skies reflecting you. From the void, you birth the light. Through the shadows, your soul takes flight. The winds will shift, its timeless bend. Every cycle begins again. Your energy builds, it flows, it streams, aligning rims, igniting your dream. Each vibration, each sacred sound, a universe moves resound. You are the spark, divine and true, illuminating. It's all you do. Just remember, it starts with you, the mirror's hue, infinite skies reflecting you. From the void, you birth the light. Through the shadows, your soul ignites. The path within, the path divine. Through space, your world aligns. Every rise, every fall, you're connected to it all. It starts with you, the quantum view, manifesting dreams like the morning dew. From the stillness, creation flows. Through the darkness, your spirit knows. It starts with you, only you. Through dimension, through the veil, the sacred truth, and you prevail. Now infinite, clear, and true. This road ahead, it's made for you. It all begins and ends with you. Even the chaos, through the flame, you rise anew, never the same. Every heartbeat, every sign weaves your essence, soaring high. The cosmos bends to your command. Creation blooms within your hand. It starts with you, only you, only you. It starts with you.
Welcome in the space, family. Happy Sunday. Come in here and hold space with me for a little while as we go on this journey. Topic tonight, how much Jesus do you need? Say hello as y'all get in the building. Give me a minute. We're going to get started here in just a second.
Christopher Columbus.
Give me a minute, y'all.
Born.
There we go. All right, we back in this thing. All right, so let's get these disclosures on the way. I share my own experiences on my journey to healing. I am a certified life coach, and my mission is simple: to restore the knowledge of self rooted in balance, truth, justice, reciprocity, and divine knowing. The beautiful thing is you don't have to abandon everything that you've been taught to receive what's available, because access is already within you. Now, let me remind you of something very powerful, and I quote, "The works that you see me do, you can also do, and also greater works than these." How can we do these works, Ty? By gaining the power from within. So while you're waiting on Jesus, lend me your mean time. Because if you don't recognize your responsibility in the process, everything you do is useless. So tonight, if it don't apply, let it fly. And some apply and some don't. Eat the meat and spit out the bones. If it all applies, eat it all and apply the knowledge. Get in the building, family. We're going to be tying in tonight with the topic of how much Jesus do you need? We're here for, I ain't going to say a short time tonight, but we're here to unpack a lot of beautiful things. But before we get into the topics, we're going to always start tonight with setting our intentions. So as you come in this space, I'm going to have you take a deep breath with me as we go on the journey of unfolding. As you breathe, allow your body to settle into the moments that show up in the space for you. Also, let yourself become present right now. And notice how often you look outside of yourself for permission to think, permission to ask, permission to ask the questions that you choose not to change, to become whatever it is that you desire for yourself. But in that, notice how often you're asking, you ask what's showing up for someone else. You're waiting for somebody else to tell you what God is saying instead of asking, what is life revealing about me? And notice how often that you've waited for someone to rescue you instead of recognizing what has already been placed inside of you. Notice how often you search for answers. Tonight is about awareness. It's about having the courage to examine the stories, the fears, the attachments, and the beliefs that has quietly shaped who you are, the way you see yourself and the way you see God. Tonight we set the intentions to become more certain and aware of the language we inherited, aware of the stories, aware of the narratives that we've been living, aware of the places where we've confused dependency with relationship. We set the intention tonight to remain curious. And if something shows up that makes you uncomfortable, don't run from that tonight. Examine it, because the moment you become aware is the moment your life can begin the process of change. And on this journey of discovery, whatever shows up for me, I'm going to claim it and I'm going to acknowledge it and hold myself accountable that it starts with me. And whatever yours is, that's yours and it starts with you. Receive that. Sit in it. And I say, and so it is. You say, and so it is. Welcome into the Space Family Hotel. Come in. We're going to hold some space tonight. For those of you that are new coming into the space, I welcome you here. My name is Tyson Matawi, and I welcome you into the space where it starts with you, where there's no shame, blame, or judgment. However, we do hold ourselves and one another accountable. But here in this space, we do a lot of things different. And by now, we should know. If we don't, we should recognize that we don't just repeat information over here. We don't, what we do over here is we slow down enough to observe how things show up in creation, how they show up in our lives, outside of what we've been taught, outside of those things that cause those prediction errors in our lives. We examine those things. So come and hold space with us for a little night as we expand together. And if something comes up for you while you're here, you're welcome to share it in the chat. And if you want to remain anonymous, also just send it to my inbox and I'll hold space on it with it on your behalf. And I'm grateful that you're back tonight, and we're going to be tying in and digging into some beautiful things, because tonight we're asking even more questions. But before we do, let's recap where we went last week. We unpacked America's Most Wanted. We took one of the most loved figures in human history, and I'm saying his story is two separate words. And we looked at that. We looked at him through a completely different lens, not as a savior or a miracle worker, but a man on this earth having this earthly experience, according to your book of magic, who was arrested, put on trial, convicted, and sentenced to be unalived by your religious system that claims to represent God. And family, we asked a lot of questions. If Jesus walked into your church right now today, what would you do with that? How would you behave? Would you recognize him or would you report him? Now, tonight we're going even deeper because after studying that story, one question wouldn't leave me alone. And we're going to be unpacking that tonight. So Dr. Simatawa and I were conversing, and that thing it resonated so hard and so deep and tough with me that I had to share my experience with you guys tonight. What if religion has done something that goes against everything natural for us? What if it has kept you 12 years old or less? What if it has kept you there? Think about it. Any healthy parent that raises a child has the goal for them to eventually stand on their own. Not because the parent stops loving them, but because love produces maturity, not dependency. A healthy teacher wants you, it doesn't want its students to stay students forever. It wants you to grow in a healthy relationship. So this process of learning should be utilized to give you the capacity to learn and to become dependent enough to do things on your own. And it means just that. Psychologically, that it's the movement from codependency to mature relationship, interdependent. Family, that's a part of the question tonight. Maybe the goal was never for you to keep needing Jesus as much as y'all reach out and say y'all do, as much as y'all cling, but the goal was for you to become what he was pointing to. Think about that. Don't rush to it, because the book says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife. Now pause, because that does not scream codependency. What that is describing is not abandonment, but maturity, not separation from love, development into adulthood. A healthy parent doesn't raise a child to remain a child forever. The goal is to one day for that child to become an adult so they can leave, it can build, it creates, it thinks, it discerns. Stand on their own 2 feet. The child doesn't stop loving the parent. They carry what the parent taught them. Now ask yourself, if that's how healthy parenting works, why would God want his children who never grew up? Why do we celebrate needing someone to think for us, pray for us, hear from God for us, interpret the scripture for us, when the pattern throughout life is to mature? It's for you to grow up. Why is it that we think that we have to depend on something outside of us for the rest of our lives? And this is why I keep reminding us that we have to go back to the origin, because words matter. Welcome in, family. Words matter. And we talked about that last time as we unpacked that. We're going back to the origin. These translations that y'all give people matter. And last week I explained we can't keep reading English and assume we're reading the author's intentions, because every translation is already interpretations. Look, it says, be ye therefore perfect. Now, the moment people hear that word perfect, the nervous system immediately says, I have to be flawless. And nobody was perfect but God. Jesus was the only one that walked this earth that can be perfect. I can't make mistakes. I have to get everything right. That is not what that means. And tonight we're unpacking it. Welcome in, family. Perfect. That word was translated into English. The Greek word was teleos. Teleos. And teleos does not mean flawless. It means mature. It means that you're complete, you're whole, you're fully developed to the intended purpose. And when I hear perfect, based on what the world gave me, I spent my life chasing something I could never become. We're spending our lives chasing this thing that will never, ever happen. Now, even though perfection is possible, but teleos does not mean that. But if I hear teleos, I understand that I'm growing, I'm developing, I'm becoming. In religion, it moves you towards shame. And the original meaning actually means I'm more mature than it looks like. So in other words, religion tells you to fake it till you make it. When we stop examining the original meaning, we can build our entire lives around that misunderstanding, that small little misinterpretation. So according to your book, and contrary to popular belief, we have work to do to become full, whole, and complete. That's the goal that's intended. We have work to do to become mature enough to do these things, to think on our own, to become the highest version of ourselves. And tonight, that's what we're unpacking. And if that's what Jesus meant, the goal was never lifelong dependency. The goal was maturity. Family, at what point does faith become an excuse to avoid responsibility? Because I can hear y'all say all the time, I'm waiting on God. Are you trusting or are you afraid? Be honest with yourself. I'm asking for myself because the very book that quotes, it says this to you. For God hath not given you the spirit of fear, but power and of love and of a sound mind. And if you have those things, welcome in. Thank you for that. Is it Tough Man, Rich? Sorry if I'm butchering that. Welcome in. Y'all put in the chat where y'all coming from and share the live for me. So if God didn't give you the spirit of fear, why are so many of our decisions made by fear and not power? That's anxiety. That's not discernment. That's insecurity. That's not faith. That's attachment. And I know y'all say, I have the faith. That's attachment. You have issues with attachment. And it ain't serving you. And I guarantee the pastor haven't given you any idea of how this thing works and how it should be showing up for you. I guarantee you. So when I ask how much Jesus do you need, I'm not asking how much you love him. I'm not questioning that. I'm asking how dependent have you become on the system of white supremacy that they've given you? Because those are two very different questions. And a healthy relationship produces maturity. An unhealthy relationship produces dependency. Ask anyone that's been in an unhealthy dynamic with a guy, or ask any man that's been in an unhealthy relationship with a woman. They always want you to be codependent on them. They never want to let you be independent. Why? Because they need you needing them. So tonight, I need us to put our thinking caps. Because we're going to be thinking and asking a lot of questions, not just to believe me, not agreeing with me. Think with me. Invoke your right. Invoke your dominion to think. Because the question we're unpacking tonight has been bothering me for a while. How much Jesus do you actually need? Say it again, Ty, for the people in the back, and slow down just a little bit. How much Jesus do you really need? Now, before y'all get offended, hear the question. Because many of us we say so many things. I need Jesus for everything. Without Jesus, I am nothing. Everything depends on Jesus. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing that, Saint. Take a deep breath. Tonight, we're examining that very thing. Do you need Jesus to breathe? Do you need Jesus to digest your food? Do you need Jesus to blink? What about to go to the restroom? I know you said yes when I asked those questions, but what about a newborn baby that has never heard the name Jesus? Yet that baby breathes, cries, eats, sleeps, grows, do all of the things. The sun still rises. The heart still beats. Life still moves. So tonight, I'm not asking whether Jesus matters to you. I'm asking something deeper. What are you really saying when you say we need Jesus? What are we really saying when I can't do nothing? I am nothing without him. Because I wonder, are we confusing interdependency with codependency? I know y'all are saying, what's the difference, Ty? How can you sit up here and say these things And I'm glad you asked that, because that's a very beautiful, important question. That's exactly what we're going to unpack tonight. So codependency is going to tell you, without you, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I would be without you. There's no identity in that. The other day we just finished unpacking that we have to know who we are. It is so important, but that interdependency that shows up. I know who I am and I'm willing to remain connected. So I'm about my Father's business. One loses itself and the other strengthens itself through relationship. One says, rescue me. The other says, help me become the highest version of me so I can operate on my own, so I can do these things the way you designed me to do. Family, those are two completely different relationships. And I think many of us have never been taught the difference. We've been taught all of our lives to how to be dependent, and we call it faith. We've been taught fear, and we call it obedience. We've been taught helplessness, and we call it humility. Right? No begging. Peace. Who is that? Tough man, Rich. Shout out to you. We don't want to beg. But tonight we're going to ask, was that really the intention? When they gave you this narrative, was that really the intention? Because healthy relationships don't tell you to erase who you are. They develop you. A healthy parent doesn't want a 40-year-old child. And, I'm saying child loosely because I know how y'all like to tussle. And when I say child, I'm saying that you haven't matured. No parent wants a 40-year-old child still needing permission to tie their shoes. Are you going to go and ask your mama and daddy right now at your big old age, can I tie my shoe right now? A healthy parent is going to teach you how to stand and how to tie those shoes on your own. So when they're not around, you can take care of yourself. They're going to teach you how to think and discern, choose on your own so that you won't need them for that. Not because the parent stopped loving you, but because love has accomplished its purpose. And isn't that what exactly what we see throughout the biblical text? No, Ty, I ain't never seen that. I know, because you don't read it. I know. But what Ty is here to do, not to condemn you or judge it, but to remind you. Listen, Paul writes, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. When I became a man, I put away those childish things. Jesus says, be ye therefore perfect, fully developed. Jeremiah speaks of a day when God's law would no longer remain outside of us, but it would be written on our hearts. The writer of Hebrews repeats the same promise. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven, a kingdom of God is within you. Do we see the movement from the outside, from everything that belongs out here to what it should be showing up in here? From dependence to internalization, from external authority to the principles that's written that should be taken with you, carried on your heart. Family, that is interdependency. Relationship without losing yourself. Connection without surrendering your agency. Growth without abandoning your identity. And if you still keep saying, I need Jesus for everything, I have to ask you some questions tonight. Who taught your nervous system that? Who taught you that you couldn't trust yourself? Because children aren't born believing that they're incapable of anything. If you ask a child and you show up and say, what is it that you can't do? They're going to tell you nothing. I can do anything. That's learned behavior. A child learns who they are through relationships, through their attachments. That's object relations. That's where the story really begins. Long before you ever had sermons, your nervous system was already learning things. What love feels like. That same people that taught them that they were a sinner. Come on. Same people that introduced this to us, tough man. The same people that taught us what safety felt like, what abandonment felt like, and whether the world could be trusted. And if we're honest, that's where how much Jesus do you need really began. Not in church, not in the theology or the doctrine, but in the first relationship that taught you what it meant to depend on someone. Hey, family. Welcome in. Hope share where you share coming in from. Mr. Unemployable. Welcome in. And that's where we're going tonight. And that's where I'm going to take my time. I gave myself permission tonight to hold space with this tonight and to actually come in and share a part of myself with you. Because I need us to really think about this. Because somewhere along the way, we become convinced that every decision, every obstacle, every emotion requires another prayer, another prophecy, another confirmation. I need pastor to confirm what it is that I think I believe. Another Sunday, another altar call. Family, at what point do we grow up? How much belief does it take to love your spouse? How much belief does it take to raise your children to tell the truth when nobody is looking? To keep your word when you say you're going to do something, to do it, to forgive someone, to start that business that you've been talking about for 10 years, to be honest. Thank you for that. How much belief does it take for you to not lie? Because if you need another sermon, or if I got to go to another conference, or I need somebody else to lay hands on me before I can actually become who I'm capable of becoming, something is wrong. Maybe the question isn't, do I need more Jesus? But what is it that I'm afraid of? What are you afraid of, family? Let me ask you something. I want everybody listening tonight. Ask yourself the same. What am I afraid of? Not what you tell people. Not what you go to the altar or to the church and answer. I want the honest answer. Because fear always tells you where your attachment lives. So let me go first. I'll volunteer. And I volunteer because I would never ask you to do or go somewhere that I'm not willing to go myself. And this was hard for me to ask. What are you so afraid of, Ty? After years of therapy, going through my ups and downs and sitting with myself, I started noticing something. Not just what happened to me, but how I responded to what happened. And I noticed I became really good at putting my own feelings on the back burner. I became the person who always understood everybody else's problems, that was always standing in the gap and praying for everybody else while rarely asking, what is it that Ty needs? I learned to overfunction, to overgive, to jump in and rescue without my life jacket on. We've unpacked how if you're in the mission to try to rescue somebody else, the rule of thumb is for lifeguards, make sure you're in a position where you're safe too, and you're not putting yourself in a compromising position. So I'm always making excuses for people. I'm going to jump in and save them because they need me. I noticed how much of my worth had become attached to being chosen. Somewhere inside of me, I believe that if I could just get married, if somebody finally picked me, if somebody finally stayed, then maybe I'd feel worthy. But it don't work that way. Not because marriage is wrong, because marriage is very beautiful, but because I had unknowingly turned marriage into proof that I was enough. I wasn't looking for a husband. I was looking for validation. I wasn't looking for companionship. I was looking for confirmation that I was worthy of being loved. And family, those are two different things. I noticed that I would suppress my own feelings to keep the peace. I would tolerate things that didn't align with me because losing myself felt safer to me. It felt safer than losing a relationship. And I noticed how often I confused being needed with being loved. How often I confused being chosen with being valued. Welcome in, Doc. How often I confused attention with attachment. And when I sat with all of that, I realized I'm not afraid of hard work. I wasn't afraid of putting in the work. I'm not afraid of success. I'm not afraid of failing. What I'm afraid of is being left. I was afraid of being left because my nervous system learned that lesson long before I could speak to what it meant. Before I had the words to communicate what it was that was showing up, I learned that the place I ran to for safety could disappear at any moment. I learned that people I depended on weren't always available. I learned that connection could be taken away at any minute. And when your body learns that, you spend years trying to make sure nobody leaves you. So you overextend yourself. You overlove. You overgive. You tolerate things that you shouldn't tolerate. You stay longer than you should stay. And it's not even because you're weak. Because your nervous system is saying, don't lose this connection. Even if you lose yourself, don't lose it. Topic tonight, how much Jesus do you need? When I say that, I can also say, was I looking for Jesus? Or was I looking for someone to finally make me feel worthy? Going to church Sunday after Sunday because I just wanted to feel worthy about something. And tonight we're unpacking that. Now hear me carefully. I'm not asking these questions because I'm angry about religion. So throw that in the trash. I'm not one of them. Matter of fact, don't just throw it in the trash. Take it to the landfill and discard it and keep it permanently out of there. That ship has sailed because I'm not trying to tear down Christianity. If that were the case, I would have stopped talking, about it a long time ago. I'm asking these questions because I finally become aware of my own psychology. Because once I stopped blaming everybody else, I started seeing something. Every place I was looking for confirmation, beloved, Miss Kathy, every place that I was looking for validation pointed back at me. To my first relationships. When I wanted to be chosen, I could see my parents. When I feared being abandoned, I could see my parents. When I struggled with my work, I could see my parents. When I needed somebody else's approval, I could see my parents. When I needed somebody else's approval, I could see my parent. And that wasn't condemnation. That was awareness. And awareness changed everything because I'm realizing I wasn't seeing reality. I was seeing life through the language my nervous system had learned. Then something happened. I found myself outside of religion, not because I hated God, not because I rejected spirituality, but because I realized the version of religion that I had embraced, that was given to me, was reinforced. It was reinforcing that very story I was trying to heal from. It kept confirming that I wasn't enough. Come on, Miss Kathy. I'm putting a heart in the chat. I'm sending you a heart. You're being intimate with me because into me you see. Vice versa, I've been there. I lived it. It kept teaching me to look outside of myself for what I kept overlooking within myself. And because that language already felt familiar, my nervous system held on to it and said, oh, this is it. This gotta be it. And it was not because it was healthy, because it matched what I had learned as a child. That's when I find my aunt. It's all inside. Peace, King. That's when I found my aunt, not as another religion, not as another church, but as a principle of balance. This is why I always tell you guys, if you live by these principles, you can eat. Whatever yours is, you can eat if you live by it. That's why my disclosures are so important to me. And I say them every time I get on here and hold space. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking, what do I have to believe? I started asking, what can restore this balance? What can help me fill in these gaps that I have this chaos within myself? What is going to produce harmony? What's going to bring me back into alignment? And every change. And when I think about that, I think about something that Jesus said. He told the young ruler, and I think I've said this about a few times back. He says, sell what you have, give it to the poor, and come follow me. And most of you will hear that and think about money. I don't. I think it's bigger than that. Because sometimes the hardest things to give away isn't what you can hold in your hand. It's not what you can touch. It's not the materialistic things. It's what's in your heart. For me, following truth meant giving up a lot. I gave up the material. I gave up a lot of material things too. I promise you I did. And it was so hard for me. I struggled. Because I got to thinking, like, what would the people think? And I gave those things up. I had to let go of relationships that no longer produce balance. I had to walk away from beliefs that no longer produce life. I had to question these traditions that I'd inherited. I had to become comfortable with disappointing people. I had to become so, you get used to so many people, what they expected, how they expected me to remain the same. Some people I'd known since I was a little girl couldn't walk this journey with me, not because I stopped loving them, but because I could no longer sacrifice my balance to preserve someone else's comfort. I had to let go of those identities that no longer fit. I had to surrender the need to always be understood. And I'm still working on that. I had to sacrifice approval to gain awareness. And looking back in that allegory, Jesus wasn't asking people to become poor. He was asking them, what are you willing to release that keeps you from becoming whole? Because every transformation is going to require some sacrifice. Sometimes you sacrifice money. Sometimes it's comfort. Sometimes it's going to be certainty. It's going to be relationships. Sometimes you sacrifice the version of yourself that you put on for those people, that mask. You sacrifice those things that no longer serve growth. The greatest sacrifice for me, family, wasn't what I owned. And I realize that now. It was who I thought I had to be for those people that was showing up when I was at my worst. And when I finally let those things go, I did not lose myself. I found balance. I found peace. I found freedom to become more fully myself. That's what follow me meant. On your journey, on my journey, not following another person's life, but following truth, even when truth costs you everything that no longer belongs in your life. Because sometimes the price of becoming whole is letting go of everything that keeps you from it. So tonight I have a hypothesis. Peace, Kathy. What if religion isn't creating all of these wounds? What if religion unknowingly is reinforcing the wounds we already walk with? You walked in with this. Don't rush to answer these questions. Think about that. If I already believe I'm not enough, and then I'm taught that I'm fundamentally broken, I was born this way, that I can't trust myself, that someone else must always tell me who I am, what happens? That message doesn't challenge my attachment wound. It comforts it because it's speaking the same language that your nervous system already understood from childhood. If I already fear abandonment and then I become terrified of losing God's favor, what happens? My body says, I've been here before. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. If I've already learned that my worth depends on pleasing authority, then I'm being taught something. That my value depends on performing correctly. And what happens? My attachment wound, it doesn't get resolved. It gets reinforced. I'm not saying that. That's what every religious community intends. I'm saying that's what happens when we never examine this language that we carry. We've been carrying it since childhood. And I know because I lived it, I leaned on it. I looked for someone outside of me to finally tell me I wasn't enough. And I kept searching for that one day when Jesus would show up and rescue me. Because soon and very soon, I was going to go to see the King. Soon and very soon, that miracle was going to show up. But it all went back to that soon and very soon when Daddy didn't show up. And then he'd come back on that motorcycle when I expected him to. It was just confirmation instead of transformation. It kept looking out there for it instead of asking, what inside of me keeps recreating this same pattern and taking it into religion? Because I want my parents to show up. Don't let this fool you. I'm not speaking from a place of bitterness. I'm not. Nor am I speaking from a place of resentment. For a long time, I was. I know what it's like to hold resentment and jealousy and envy. I know what that's like. We all come around to the truth. Peace to you, King. But awareness taught me the difference. You see, for years, I carried so many things watching a man who could show up. He was capable. I watched him show up for the people he chose to show up for. Yet when it came to him explaining why it wasn't available for me, the explanation to my mother was I was young. I didn't know any better. But then I kept watching. The years passed. And the pattern and that pattern stayed the same. The words changed, but the behavior didn't. Family, that bothered me for a really long time. And what I thought was what I thought about was my fear. Not because I hated him, because I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand it for the life of me. I kept asking myself, why wasn't I enough? Why is it that all these white flags that I'm waving and all this attention that I'm trying to seek, all these things that I'm doing, why couldn't you show up for me like you show up for everybody else? And if I'm honest, I carried those questions into my adulthood. If you're not careful, family, those things that you questioned yourself about as a child, you carried it into your adulthood. I didn't realize it then, but I found myself looking for someone else to fulfill that need. To finally show up for me, to finally choose me, to finally stay. Unmet childhood needs. Peace, King. Doc, welcome in. To finally say to me, to make me feel like I was worth staying for. That's what the feeling and the fear of being left looks like. It doesn't always look like crying. Sometimes it looks like overgiving. Sometimes it looks like people pleasing. Sometimes it looks like settling. Sometimes it looks like constantly trying to prove that you're worthy of being loved. Listen, that's why we're becoming. We're becoming tonight. We're holding space with this. Sometimes it looks like self-harm. Peace. All because your nervous system is trying to solve a question it had been asking since childhood. But awareness, sometimes it looks like self-destruction. Sometimes it looks like self-sabotage. Peace. But awareness did something beautiful in my life, family. And I hope you can walk with me as I'm saying how these things show up in my life so you can see how it can show up in yours. It gave me an opportunity to step outside of religion. Awareness didn't make me blame him. Awareness helped me understand that people can only give what they first developed within themselves. They can't give what they don't have. Now, keep in mind, I'm not excusing no behavior, because he has to deal. They have to deal. Your family, whoever yours is, has to deal with that on themselves. That's a them problem, not a me problem. I got to worry about me. It does not excuse their behavior, but it helped me stop carrying the weight of wondering what's wrong with me. Come on, I have to grieve it to set me free. Peace, Doc. We have to deal with it. And that's what we're unpacking tonight, Miss Kathy. These are that anxiety that's showing up from you is based on things that you've experienced in childhood. I guarantee you can trace it back. If you walk back and say, why is this showing up for me? Why am I so anxious? Why am I anxiously attached? Why do I have this anxiety? Why am I running from everything? Why am I avoiding? That's what I was looking for, peace. Anxiety is living in the future. The future don't exist. Time don't exist. Tough man. Only now exists. And that's the problem that we have, tough man. We're not present because we're always looking back, or we always trying to look forward instead of being present, and we miss so much. The truth is, the lack of work, his inability to show up was never evidence. It was evidence of his own limitations. And when I finally understood that, I stopped waiting for that motorcycle to come back around the corner. Time, President's future exists because we have existence in all dimensions. Peace. Good evening. Welcome in. Time present. I love this. Thank you guys for sharing with me tonight. I'm not in this space, holding this space by myself. I appreciate y'all. I'm just showing y'all all the love. I stopped waiting for my mother to treat me like she treats other people. When I start grieving those things, I have to stop waiting for God to heal what another person wounded. I have to stop searching for someone to convince me that I matter, because I can finally realize my worth was never supposed to be negotiated by somebody else's capacity to love me. That's what awareness gave me. It gave me balance. It gave me discernment. It gave me permission to stop chasing what was never mine to earn. It gave me permission to stop asking who is finally going to choose me, and I can start asking, how do I begin to choose myself? We're going to have to stop that, beloved. We need to work on that. We can't allow people to stand in the way. Get out your own way and see about you. And if we never ask these questions, we'll spend our lives looking outside of ourselves for that love. Miss Kathy, if you don't do this, you'll spend your life looking outside of yourself for love, for that safety, for the security, for the belonging and the worth. That was waiting to be cultivated within you. The opposite of abandonment isn't another person showing it up. The opposite of abandonment is no longer abandoning yourself. So family, you have to examine, you have to ask questions, to stop pretending, to stop performing, to finally ask, what story has been living inside of me since I was a child that has caused me to stay? That has caused me to stay in this place where I think that I can let somebody else bring me down. That has caused me to say I need Jesus for everything. Topic tonight. I need Jesus for everything. How much Jesus do you need? That's the topic tonight. So that safety, the security, the belonging, the worth that we've never cultivated within, and that's where I believe the story of Jesus takes on a different meaning. Not as a call to remain dependent, but as an invitation to become teleios, to become mature, whole, to embody those principles instead of endlessly searching for someone else to embody them for us. Because maturity doesn't remove relationship, it transforms it. That's interdependency, that's balance, that's ma'at. And that's why every week I remind you that it starts with you. And I'm going to make this practical for us tonight, because somebody is probably saying, Ty, are you telling me not to pray? And I'm not. I'm asking those prayers. I'm asking of you, those prayers that you're praying, what are they producing? Because some of y'all have been praying for the same shit for 15, 10, 20, 30 years. You've been praying for the same thing night after night. I think it was you, True Man, said that it's almost like we're begging now. Praying for the same thing, that's begging. And it's not because God isn't listening, whatever you put your name on it according to you. Because prayer, your way, you can't pray your way through this. You can't feel your way through this, because prayer has become a substitute for responsibility. You don't pray your way into becoming faithful. You become faithful. You don't pray your way into becoming honest. You become honest. You don't pray your way into becoming, loving. You practice love. At the same point, your life has to become the prayer. And let me ask you a question. How many times have you heard somebody say, God told me? God told me to marry, that person. God told me to take this job. God told me to start this ministry. He told me to sow this seed. God told me to move. God told me to leave. But they don't never say God told me to leave. Then the very thing they said God told them falls apart. And nobody stops to ask what happened. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Instead of we find another explanation, another prophecy, another reason, another conference to go to, another offering, another seed. Remember that cycle we unpacked the other day, how cycles survive. We have the expectation, disappointment, and then we have the explanation and hope, and then it starts over and over again. Psychology has a name for it. When reality contradicts a deeply held belief, the mind doesn't abandon the belief. It creates a new explanation to protect it. It's called cognitive dissonance. In other words, it's a defense against anxiety. Because admitting maybe I was wrong is so painful that I would rather reinterpret the story to protect the belief instead of examining it. That's the cycle. And that's why I keep asking, how much Jesus do you need? Because if every prediction error requires explanation, another prophecy, another confession, another offering, another miracle, then maybe the system isn't producing maturity. Y'all childish out here in these streets and y'all don't want to admit it. Because it's producing dependency. That's a hard pill to swallow. Because if every outcome that doesn't happen gets explained away, at what point do you stop and say, what did God say? And start asking, what am I responsible for? Because maturity doesn't remove relationship, it increases responsibility, it increases your accountability. And that's the difference between codependency and interdependency. Now let me ask you something. Ty, if the goal is teleosis, maturity, if that's the goal, then why does it take so much to get us to move? Why does it take another prophecy or a confirmation before we make a decision? I don't think it takes it at all. And I do not think that it takes that. And before some of y'all get mad, I'm asking, what has prayer become? Because metaphysically, prayer was never meant to replace participation. It was meant to produce alignment with the truth, alignment with love, alignment with wisdom and responsibility. And the crazy part is y'all only go to God when y'all want something. I want a new husband, or I want a husband. I want a wife. I want a promotion. Jesus, I need a new house. I need a healing. I need a little piece of change. I need a breakthrough. I need a miracle. Please heal my body. I want. That's the only time y'all go. Picari. Thank you for sharing that. Did you know 2431? All y'all do is want stuff. I'll never hear y'all praying when you don't want nothing. And once you get it, you disappear until you want something else, until the next emergency show up. Now ask yourself, is that a relationship or is that dependency? Because I don't see any reciprocity in that. Because then an interdependent relationship changes who you become. And a codependent relationship only shows up when there's a crisis. Hey, thank you for sharing that. We all know what they told us. Give us your children. And we're going to give them all these narratives and all these words that are low vibrational. Also, let's give them English. One of the lowest vibrational languages out there. Let's take them away from their native tongue. Thank you for sharing that. Did you know? We're doing all those things. Meant to manifest something that's in the feeling. Come in and hold it. I love that y'all sharing with me tonight. Y'all share the video, share the live. I remember there was a time you couldn't have convinced me that I wasn't supposed to get married. I remember, Nick, I knew, like, this is for me. And I'm not saying my idea is different now. I just had the wrong concept. All I could hear at that time was it's better to marry than to burn. And I never stopped to ask nobody what it meant. Because just like my parents taught me, slapping me in the mouth because I was talking too much. I didn't ask. Instead of going and being nosy and finding out what Paul was actually talking about when he said that. I just heard one verse. which y'all are so good at throwing people in one-liners. It's better to marry than to burn. So the person thinking, oh, because I want to be in relationship, I got to marry this person, even if I don't like them, because I don't want to burn in hell. Fear is a tactic that it shouldn't even be used. And because I trusted you, I built an entire expectation around that narrative. So I need to go ahead and do this. And Dr. Simatawa brought something to my attention, to my remembrance today. He told me, he said, go back and look at Juanita Bynum. And as he brought it back, I remembered that she was one of the most recognized women preachers in the country at that time. People was looking to her for marital advice, for relationship, for information. They were going to all these conferences. She was writing books. People was traveling from all over to hear what God said from this lady. But Doc said to me, because I was ready, listen, he said to me, "Who don't judge her? Don't even try to shame this lady for what she was doing. This is why it's going to always be him for me. Because I be on that rah-rah. Y'all don't even know. Ty is so fiery. If y'all don't know her, you're going to get to know. She is so fiery. But I be on that rah-rah. I do. But he's the calm to my storm because, I was like, yes, this lady, she's a con artist, Doc. I'm convinced that she's taking my people money. And I need to speak up. And I need to talk about this thing. This is my idea. This is what I was saying. I be fighting for y'all. Despite y'all telling people to come from amongst me, I be fighting for y'all rights. But anyway, I got all in my feels because I thought this lady was a con artist, and I thought she was taking things from y'all. She was asking, I need 1,000 people to give. No, I need 21 people to give $1,000. That's what she said. And I got all up in my feelings. I was like, it ain't right. And I'm talking about it tonight. And he said to me, I don't know about that, Pooh. That's what he called me. I know he ain't mad at me when he called me that. So I like it. So it already calmed me down when he did that. This is what relationship is about. He said, we learned this behavior somewhere.
The security for the belonging.
Uh-oh. Sorry, y'all. We learned this behavior somewhere. We learned that it was okay to allow things to happen this way. Don't Ty always say it starts with you? So where is your accountability in that? Look at the patterns. And I love for him to hold me accountable. Y'all don't even know. I'm the one that be on that rah-rah. I ain't lying. I'm the one that be on it. He says, look at the patterns. So I went back and I watched it again. Not one clip, but I looked at the patterns instead of judging this lady. I watched her publicly testify that God had sent her this husband that she had. I watched the marriage become her testimony. I watched this lavish wedding that she said she spent $1 million on. I watched people invest emotionally, financially, spiritually into that testimony. Then I watched that marriage fall apart after she said God told her that this was supposed to happen. Then came the explanations. Then came the books, more conferences. Then came another narrative, another, appeal, another opportunity to sow a seed. And Doc said, and I can only think about him. And he said, Pooh, what are you seeing? I bet you there isn't a pastor alive that could convince me. And this is what he was saying, not me, but you. There's not a pastor alive right now that convince you to give tithes right now, today. And I felt I was all still in my feels because, and I smiled and I said, no. He said, why? And I thought about it for a second and I answered, because I know better. And he said, that's your left foot. That's what's supposed to be there from the beginning. Your parents teach you that secure attachment style. too responsible for giving you the tools that you need, but you didn't have that. So you were looking outside of yourself for that thing. But if you would have stopped and examined and let the heart proceed before your feet move. Family, hear what I'm saying. It isn't really about the tithing. It's about discernment. It's about awareness, how we develop awareness. You don't just hand your life over to anybody who sounds convincing. You don't surrender your mind because somebody has a title. You don't mistake confidence for truth. You stop and you examine, you weigh it, you question. And why couldn't I be convinced anymore? Because I had already learned. I had already paid the tuition. Pain became my teacher until awareness took its place. And here's what breaks my heart oftentimes. It shouldn't have taken that pain to show up. It shouldn't have taken that. Discernment is supposed to show up before the pain because discernment is there to protect you. That's what it's designed to do. You know how people say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I want to challenge that tonight. As we learn and grow, we need to start challenging and asking questions about the foolishness that we get fed. I want to challenge that tonight because I don't think discernment was ever supposed to arrive after the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the tick time down the line. It takes you to learn something. That's called insanity. Doing the same thing, expecting different results. That is not. Come on. We're making good time. You still have to pray for your enemy. That's called insanity, Miss Kathy. Doing the same thing, expecting different results. Discernment was supposed to help us before the first time. That's why healthy parenting is, that's what healthy parenting is for. That's what emotional development is for. That's why secure attachment it should be there. A child who has been taught how to recognize safety doesn't have to touch every hot stove to know that it burns. They've learned to trust the wisdom that has been developed within them. But many of us were never given that curriculum. Our parents couldn't teach what they didn't have. They couldn't teach what they'd never been taught. Many of them loved us with everything they have, but love and emotional awareness are not the same thing. So we grew up looking for someone else to become our discernment. We looked for a pastor, a husband, a wife, a church, a religion, God outside of us, someone to tell us what our own heart had never been taught to recognize. And that's why so many people can be so easily manipulated right now today. This is why ladies without fathers, listen to me, this is why you get the shittiest men. Not because we stupid, not because single mom household, this is why we get this. Because we're searching for what should have been developed long before we ever walked into adulthood or before we walked into a sanctuary. Now let me say something that may make some of y'all uncomfortable, because Ty will do that. I guarantee many of the people who was giving that lady thousands of dollars, let me change that. That tithe right now today, those of you that put money in the tithing, collection plate, even though it was supposed to be done away with forevermore, who keep sowing seeds, who keep believing, who keep waiting, you're just looking for miracles. You're looking for something you lost a long time ago. Put your name on it, whether it's acceptance, whether I want to belong or be a part of something, whether it's safety or approval. What about a mother or a father? Someone to finally say that you're enough. Someone to finally say that I'm here for you. Because if that need has already been developed within your parents, those manipulation tactics would never pull. It would never pull at your heartstrings, Miss Kathy. That would never pull at your heartstrings. You don't look for the things that you have. You ain't out here looking for love if you already have it from within. You ain't out here looking for drinks in your refrigerator. You ain't going to the store to get drinks for your refrigerator if you already got a refrigerator full. Come on. You look for the things that you don't have. Because if that need is already, you already got it. Let me say it your way. No weapon formed against you will prosper. Now here's the part that finally made sense to me. If a child spends years waiting for someone to show up and they never do, the child doesn't usually stop waiting. The waiting becomes a part of their identity. So when they're introduced to a relationship where they're told, keep waiting, hold on, one day, in God's timing, the nervous system doesn't resist it. It recognizes it because waiting had become familiar. So when that man tell you, just keep waiting. I'm gonna be faithful one day. That's familiar to you. Because what? You waited on your daddy because that was okay. Not because waiting is always wrong, but because the body has learned that love is something you wait for. That approval is something you wait for. Rescue is something you wait for. So how that works. So even when it feels like God isn't showing up, the nervous system, I've survived this before. I know this feeling. I've been waiting my whole life. And that's why for many people, it becomes easier to keep waiting than to ask, what if I'm being taught to wait when I should be being taught to become what it is that I need? Or I need to get up and do something myself. Miss Kathy, you say you got to love everyone? Even God hated it. It's a time to love and a time to hate. That's biblical. Topic tonight. How much Jesus do you need? What I'm sharing with you is the cycle I see. And something says, no, you're seeing something deeper than a cycle. You're watching what happens when people confuse their own desires, their hopes, their certainty with the voice of God. Family, hear me carefully. This isn't about one woman. This is about a pattern. This is about a pattern that's perpetuated in the system of white supremacy. Because I've seen pastors do it. I've seen prophets, apostles, Christians. I've even did these things myself. We say God told us all these things. Then life says something different. Whether you know it or not, there's a psychological diagnosis for this. Most people think when their prediction fails, they'll change their belief. That's not what usually happens. The mind protects your beliefs before it'll protect the truth. It's called defense mechanism. And cognitive dissonance, I just told y'all that. Your nervous system experiences tension because reality doesn't match your expectation. And instead of saying, maybe I misunderstood it, I'll go around saying, you got to love everybody. My aunt doesn't teach that. The mind creates another explanation, another prophecy, another reason to spiritualize the interpretation. It don't need your permission. Anything except uncertainty. That's what a carnal mind does. It protects before it pursues the truth. Religion is the perfect environment for that because every prediction error can be explained away. Every disappointment becomes another testimony. Every contradiction becomes another revelation. And I bet that no one will ever have you sit with that because no one wants you to sit with the possibility that it's wrong. These are some hard questions. If someone repeatedly say, God told me, and they said God, and it doesn't happen, or repeatedly changes, at what point are y'all going to stop asking what God said? Because now this has become one of two things. Either they're lying on God or God is failing. Say it again for the people in the back time. If they come into you saying, God said, and it's not happening, it's only one of two things. Either they lying on God or God is a failure. Y'all be in these streets confusing your own desires, your own fears and hopes with the voice of God. So Ty, how can I determine what God is saying? Now you asking real questions. We asking some real questions now. You cooking with grease now, Ty. I know these things are hard pills to swallow. And your nervous system is all rattled because Ty is saying these things. And the Bible says, what I'm saying, the Bible says it. If I'm not telling the truth, debunk me with verified information. Now keep in mind, I only debate my equals, the others I teach. So if tonight is about teleos, maturity, because we're grown-ups in here, at least we should be. So we need to put them big girl panties on, them big boy boxers on, because we need to start examining ourselves before we explain everything away. Because maybe how much Jesus do you need is it's really another way of asking, how much responsibility are you willing to take for your own discernment? How much accountability are you able to take for your own shit? I need y'all to hear my heart. I'm not sharing these stories to tear anybody down. I'm sharing them because of prevention is always better than repair. Think about that. When it comes to your physical health, doctors talk about prevention. When it comes to your finances, people tell you to invest early. When it comes to mental health, we talk about catching the pattern before it becomes the personality. But when it comes to your religion, why do we wait until everything falls apart before we start asking questions? Why aren't we teaching prevention then? Why aren't we teaching people how to become spiritually dependent in the first place? Because if you teach these people how to become dependent, they may not need you. Family, that's why we're having this conversation. not so I or you can point out a finger at somebody else. We got rid of the goat last year. This is about holding ourselves accountable of what's showing up in here, not looking out here. I'm not looking at none of you. So we can recognize these patterns, because the issue isn't just the preacher's authority. The issue is our willingness to surrender our own discernment. Now, let me ask you something. Do you have a codependent relationship with God or an interdependent one? There's a difference. What is the difference, Ty? Codependent relationship says, God does everything for me, Miss Kathy. An interdependent relationship says, teach me so I can become who you created me to be. Teach me how to fish so I don't need to have to keep coming to you to keep fishing for me. Teach me. I'm willing to learn. One keeps asking God to carry you, and the other learns to walk and connect. Black man, black woman, this is about reciprocity. That's relationship. That's maturity. How do you demonstrate your love for God when nobody else is around? Not in the church, not on Facebook, not with a microphone in your hand. So I'm not talking about putting on for your city. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about when y'all get on here and show out and I got to show everybody. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the integrity that you have when nobody's watching. I'm asking, show me. Not even show me, because y'all can, because I can't believe typically what they used to say, believe none of what you see and half of what you hear. I'll settle for you just telling me, even though I should be able to see it in your life. How do you love God? By the way you love yourself. All right, Miss Kathy. Because I can really see how y'all love God by how y'all treat people. I mean, if we want to keep it 100, I can. I can see how y'all love God from how y'all treat me. So how do you love God? By the way you love yourself. Because if the kingdom is within you, and Miss Kathy, maybe answer that question for me, because you said, at one point you were saying how you let people get you down. How are you loving God by the way you love yourself? Because part of how you honor God shows up in the relationship with you. Did I not say the ye are God's? What that nutrition look like? What does that look like? Because I'm giving you how you show you love God. What about this temple? Do you renew your mind? What are you watching? What are you indulging in? I know that. I see what y'all be doing. Do you sell yourself the truth? Miss Kathy, do you tell yourself the truth? Do you develop your gifts? Do you protect your peace? Did the text not say the ye are God's? Did it not tell you to be the head and not the tail? Does it tell you not to be the lender? Be the lender and not the borrower? Let me say that one more time, because I don't want y'all to take my words. And does it not say be the lender and not the borrower? It's telling you how to show your love for God. Family, those aren't just promises to wait on. Those are invitation to become those things, what you intended to be. Look, Jesus says, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did I not prophesy and cast out demons? Did we not do the mighty works in your name? And I noticed something. I noticed something with that I'd never noticed before until now. Everything they listed in that was external. So we wonder why that we can't get anywhere because we're always looking externally. I preach to people, I heal people, I prophesize, I perform, but nowhere does it say I became. I loved me. I became those things. That's the difference. You can be on fire for religion all you want and still lose yourself. The main thing Ty talks about is knowledge of self. You can know every scripture and never know yourself. You can spend your life doing things for what you so call God, while never allowing the process to transform you. It says that you will be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's why I keep saying God was never supposed to become your permanent crutch. The relationship was always supposed to be a weaning off process. You're supposed to wean off. Just like your parents did you. Think about a baby. A healthy baby isn't supposed to stay on the bottle forever. The bottle isn't bad. It's not the destination. The goal is always for the baby to mature enough to start eating solid foods on their own. Look, let me get my music right. Got to get my vibe right, because we're gonna take our time. We still got we got a good amount of time to finish this up. Paul is writing a letter to the Christians in the city of Corinth. They had accepted his teaching, but years later they were still arguing. They were divided into two groups. One saying, I'll follow Paul, and the other saying, I'll follow Apollos. Competing with one another and acting immature. And Paul says to them, brothers and sisters, I could not address you as people who live by the Spirit, but as people who are still worldly, mere infants in Christ. And because of that, I gave you milk, not solid food, for you were not yet ready for it. Indeed, you are still not ready. What was Paul saying, Ty? He wasn't insulting them. He was saying, I expect you to have grown up by now. Do you believe in evil spirits? I believe whatever is in you is in you. That's what I believe. I don't know if that's Vivian. I believe if it's in you, it's in you. I expect y'all to have grown up by now so y'all can be on some solid foods, but you carried that into your adulthood. I expected you to be able to think. Let me say that another way. Like Ty would say, I expected y'all to be using your African minds to think. I expected you to stop acting like children in my language. I expected you to become teleos. Why does that matter, Ty? Because the goal is not for you to always be dependent on your Father God. And this is not what Ty says. This is what your biblical text is telling you. A healthy parent teaches your child until that child can stand up on their own, not because the love in it, but because the love succeeded. Ladies, can I talk to y'all for just a minute? I know y'all in the building. We've been told we have this discernment, this insight, but discernment isn't only recognized. It shouldn't only be recognized after the 10th time. Real discernment helps you recognize what you've been seeing before, so it can protect you before the wound actually happens. It's your alarm system. There's nothing alarming about seeing something that you already know is going to happen. That's why I'm sharing these public examples, not because I enjoy exposing people. If my people could learn from it, I wouldn't spend my time talking about it. If you couldn't, I'm not interested in humiliation. I'm interested in prevention. Because if you recognize the pattern before it becomes your life, then maybe, just maybe, you won't have to spend years recovering. I spent so many of my years recovering, trying to get out of that hole that I actually dug for myself, out here searching for something outside of myself. So this is about prevention. This is for preventing, trying in an attempt to prevent us from falling in the same ditch. All from something that if we were taught properly, that we could have learned to discern in the beginning. That's what teleos looks like, not perfection, the way they gave it to us, but maturity. The institution is divine. Topic tonight: how much Jesus do you need? Think about it. God's plan was never for you to stay a spiritual child forever. What good parent wants that for their children? To depend on them for everything for the rest of their lives. A good parent is going to teach you how to think, how to make good decisions, and how to live. The Bible says we move from milk to solid foods. Why? Because we're supposed to grow. We're supposed to mature. The goal isn't for God to do everything for you forever. The goal is for what God teaches you to become part of who you are. So instead of always asking, what should I do? You become the kind of person who already knows how to love, who already knows how to show compassion, who already knows how to choose what's right. Not because there's a consequence and you're going to go to hell because of it. Not because you're being forced, because you're in fear. I don't want to burn. But because those principles that were written on your heart, that's what growth looks like. That's what maturity looks like. That's the difference between someone who stays dependent and someone who has grown into a person that's mature. God was shaping them to become that. Oh, I'm jamming. Family, the ability to learn from your experiences before life has to teach you the same lesson over and over again. We're not finished because I'm going deeper. Y'all share the live. Because this isn't really about the preacher. It isn't just about a church or religion. It starts with you. Long before you ever met a pastor, you met your parents. Long before you ever heard a sermon, you learned what relationships should feel like. Years ago, I unpacked, what that attachment styles look like. It ain't on the timeline. It ain't on my YouTube either, because it was way back down that timeline years and years ago. But I unpacked what those attachment styles look like and how they show up. Back then, I understood the theory, but I don't think I understood fully how much those attachment styles connect to other things and how they would shape everything that came after. It has to connect for me. And family, you should want that for yourself as well. You should want things to connect. If they don't connect, start questioning it. That should be your MO. If this don't make sense, I got questions. Tonight, I'm not just teaching you. I'm sharing me with you. Because if I'm asking you to examine yourself, I have to be willing, and I have been willing and ready to examine myself. And this is not an easy thing. Trust me, I've cried many nights. I've had a hard time. It's really complicated when you can't blame nobody else, and it's me. I don't have nobody else to blame. I can't say the devil made me do it. I can't say God told. I can't, unless I'm talking about me, because I recognize who I am. Ty said to do it. I examined my own attachment. When I grew up, I was a love bug, and I know that because my mama confirmed that. I was such a calm and good baby that rarely cried, according to her. She would sometimes do things to get, a reaction out of me. So she would pinch and bite me so I could cry. Because when I cried, she could comfort me. That was her own shit. But when she would do those things, she wanted me to cry so she could soothe me because she needed to feel needed. Oh, thank you. I guess it's smiley face or starry eyes. Thank you. Now, family, whether she realized it or not, my little nervous system was learning something. It was learning when I hurt, I can go to a person who comforts me. When I'm scared, I can go to a person who makes me feel safe. When life overwhelmed me, I could go to the source that calmed my body. That's how attachment worked. That's not weakness. That's biology, and the body keeps the score. That's how God designed a child. Your first relationships become the language your nervous systems speak. But then imagine this. Imagine the very person who taught your body where safety lies is no longer consistently there. Now you're left with relatives and family members, grandparents, and people who may love you but don't speak the same language. So instead of presents, you receive gifts. And I'm talking about presence, being there. Instead of connection, you receive things. Now your body starts learning something. Maybe love looks like receiving gifts or presents. And I'm talking about the gifts, packaging. Maybe love comes and goes. Maybe love is inconsistent. Then imagine the one place you still run to, your mother begins to change. Here's a new relationship entering the picture. Soon to be husband now. A new language begins to be taught. The language wasn't spoken, it was modeled. I did a teaching on poor modeling before. That was many years ago. You can't get that one there either. But y'all would have to start tuning in live so you can get this information and eat while you can. But I can almost imagine that conversation as she was having with her new spouse. She says, she really wants a bike. She likes gifts. She'll be okay with this. If we buy her something, she'll adjust to it. Like she normally does, because that's what I do. Family, do you hear that language? Nobody meant harm, but my nervous system wasn't hearing your love. It was learning when connection disappears, use these things to replace it. When present disappears, buy something. When affection disappears, buy something. When attachment is broken, buy something. You know what else I had to wrestle with? I used to tell people my love language was gifts. Put it in the chat. What is your love language? And I guarantee some of y'all to say quality time. Some of you to say affection, touch. But after years of therapy, I thought my love language was gifts. It wasn't. Gifts were the language my nervous system learned to accept when presence wasn't available, when I couldn't have that thing that I yearned for. And the crazy part is the bike wasn't the problem. The gifts wasn't the problem. The lesson became the problem. Because my first teachers were teaching me the language of relationships. They were teaching me without ever saying a word what love should look like, what comfort looks like, what loss looks like, what replacement looks like. That became my curriculum. It becomes your object relation. That's the blueprint your nervous system carries around into every relationship that follows. So now, they absolutely do, tough man. Not even recognizing if you saying your love language is gifts, let that man stop complimenting you and see how you feel. Let that man stop touching you and see how you feel. Same way, brother, if you're saying, I like touch, let that lady go without wishing you To all the fathers, happy Father's Day. I'm sorry. Happy Father's Day. Y'all don't get recognized enough. So if you're a father, my apologies. My intention was to come in here and say that from the beginning, because y'all don't get enough praise for those of you that show up and be the men that you are. My hats are off to you. Doc, if you're still in here, I say it to you again, happy Father's Day. That's the blueprint that our nervous system carries, those things that we take, and we take them out of context and we cling to them. So now go look at your life and put your own on it. Not your pastor's, but yours. Ask yourself, what language did my first teachers teach me? Did they teach me that love is safe, or that love disappears? Did they teach me that my needs matter, or that I have to earn attention? Did they teach me that you could trust, or that you should always prepare to be abandoned? Because whatever the language, your first language was taught to you, becomes the language you unconsciously speak in adulthood. And that's why some of us keep allowing people to treat us the way they treat us. And we can't blame nobody for this. Now, hear me careful. This isn't about blame. This is about us holding ourselves accountable in this space. Because blame keeps you looking backwards. Awareness moves you forward. I'm not blaming your parents. I'm not blaming my parents. I'm not blaming the church. I'm not blaming the preacher. I'm asking you to understand how your nervous system learned to survive in these systems. The reason that you gravitated to the church, the reason that you gravitated to the preacher to begin with, go back to the source, to your first teacher. Because until you understand the language, you'll keep speaking it without realizing it. We don't choose what's healthy. We choose what's familiar. And what you're familiar with can be unhealthy. That's why we keep following leaders who repeatedly disappoint us. Because our nervous system says, I've been here before. Not this is good for me. That's your homeostasis. The body protects before it pursues what's healthy. That's why the church you choose isn't random. The relationships you choose aren't random, because what shows up in those relationships it's there, and it could help you heal if you are to take a look at yourself and look within instead of looking external. The leaders you trust aren't random. If chaos feels like love, you mistake peace for boredom. If inconsistency feels like love, inconsistency feels unfamiliar. If you've learned that love must be earned, you keep chasing people who make you earn it. You attract that. I used to tell this, and I like saying this all the time. You attract your likeness. So if you turn your dial just right, you can tap in and tune into the right frequency to attract all the beautiful things. But if you're on that low frequency, on that number, on that 10, if you're down in guilt, if you're down in shame, if you're down in apathy, you're going to pull those things towards you. You attract your likeness. And I know y'all say we attract our opposites. Absolutely not. You attract your likeness. Let's go even deeper, Ty. Because once you understand that your first relationship becomes your first language, everything starts making sense. It's called repetition compulsion. The nervous system keeps recreating what it never resolves. And it's going to give you the same experiences until you learn the lesson, because it's trying to finish what it never understood. Beloved, y'all, please hear me. Your body is always searching for completion. It keeps saying, maybe this time, maybe this relationship, maybe this church, maybe this pastor, maybe this prophecy, maybe this marriage will finally heal what the first relationship wounded. That's why you can leave one unhealthy church and end up in another unhealthy one. You can leave one manipulative relationship and find another. You can leave one controlling leader and follow another. Different building, different pastor, different denomination, same language. Because if the language never changes, the scenery doesn't matter. You'll recreate the same story with different actors. This is why Ty keeps saying it starts with you. And I love that I branded that. It starts with you. It starts with you. And you are complicit. Family, they're speaking the language that your body already understood. That's why it feels like home when you show up there and they saying the right thing. They get you all in your feels. And this is where I believe our ancestors were trying to teach us something. When we study Kemet, we find the principles of Ma'at. Most people reduce Ma'at to just truth and justice, but Ma'at is so much bigger than that. Ma'at is right relationship. It never asks, what do you believe? Ma'at was asking, does your life produce balance? Does this relationship produce balance? Does this thought produce balance? Does this decision produce balance? Does my community produce balance? Does my friend group produce balance? Is the relationship helping me get to balance? Because if it doesn't, something is out of alignment. So we got some work to do. Now think about what we've been unpacking. Your body learned that. That language becomes that homeostasis. Your homeostasis become your identity, and your identity keep attracting what's familiar. Ma'at would stop you before you repeated that pattern. Does this move to restore balance or disturb it? So before you marry that man, Ma'at said, before you join, Ma'at asks. Before you give your money, Ma'at is going to ask questions. Before you surrender your mind, your body, Ma'at asks. That's what I mean when I say step with your left foot forward and let your heart proceed. Not because the left foot is magical, but because you're choosing to let your heart go first. Now I know what some of y'all are thinking. Ty, I don't know, I don't know anything about my aunt. I wasn't raised in Kemet, so I don't know about these 42 principles that I'm supposed to have instead of these 10 commandments that they gave you in the biblical text. It's 42. That was plagiarized from that, and they only give you bits and pieces of it because they want you one directional. But I don't know any of that, Ty. Absolutely, I'm glad you said something. Because I got you, sis. King, I got you. And we're going to unpack that tonight. Let's stay in the language you already know. I don't know if I can even say that because I know the stories I bring up, even in the biblical text, I use those to demonstrate a point, but y'all don't read it, so y'all don't know that either. So why don't you keep the same energy with that? That's neither here nor there, but for shits and giggles, let me give it to you anyway, because that's what Ty likes to do. I'm okay with that. Whether you know it or not, your book of magic gives you the same process that Ty's talking about. No, I don't, Ty. Y'all should know better than to say that I don't know. You should know better. But I sympathize because I didn't know it either because I didn't read it. So this is not anything to condemn anybody. This is an attempt to actually show us where we need to strengthen ourselves. This is prevention. Okay, through an allegory. Let me show you something. Imagine a man walking into your city. Nobody knows him. Nobody grew up with him. Nobody knows if he's telling the truth. But he comes in and he says, I've come to teach you about God. Imagine that. Now let me ask you, what would you do? Would you automatically believe him just because he said so? Would you reject him just because you don't know him? Or would you investigate? Family, that's exactly what happened in the book of Acts. There was a man named Paul. He traveled from city to city teaching people. One day he arrived in a place called Berea. Now, the people in Berea had never heard of Paul before. He wasn't their pastor, their bishop, or apostle, or whatever y'all calling yourself today. I'm just trying to make it make sense for you and relevant for the time. He didn't have a YouTube. He wasn't a Facebooker. He wasn't a blogger. So he wasn't known by millions of followers. He was simply a man claiming to teach the truth. And here's what I love about that. They didn't attack him. They didn't worship him. They didn't blindly believe him. The Bible says they listened carefully. They received what he had to say with an open mind, but they didn't stop there. When Paul left, it says that they went to their homes. They opened the scripture and they started reading for themselves. And they asked, is what this man is saying actually in the text? Not do I like him? Not is he popular? Not is everybody else believing in him or not? Not is Ty showing up giving us this information, even though it's true. We got to come from amongst us, so we gonna believe it. That's not what they asked. They asked, is it true? Those people were more noble than many others. Not because they believed Paul, not because they rejected Paul, but because they examined what they were being taught. Did y'all catch that? The Bible doesn't criticize them for questioning the very thing that it tells you guys. They tell you guys, you ain't supposed to question. The Bible does not criticize these people of not knowing something. So I'm going to ask them question. It did not criticize them for doing that. So how many contradictions do you need? The Bible honors them for examining. And that's what Ma'at is. It gives you bits and pieces from Ma'at, because I know where this information was plagiarized and they took it from. And when Ty gives you something, you don't have to like her. It's about weighing it. It's about testing. It says test everything. Go and look it up. Go and learn. Go and know for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. I welcome you to it. That's letting your heart proceed before your feet commit. Because if Paul, one of the greatest teachers in the New Testament, according to y'all, could withstand examination, why can't your church? Why can't your denomination? Why can't your favorite pastor that y'all say gonna go to heaven before anybody else? And I know that y'all, I can ask y'all right now, and y'all say pastor will go before anybody else. Why can't your belief? The truth never fears investigation, only deception does. And Jesus says the exact same thing using a different language. He says, you will know them by their fruit. Notice he never says you'll know them by their title. He never says you'll know them by how many churches they built. He never says you'll know them by how many followers they have, or how many fancy material things they have, or how they show up in life and not show up for the people and show people that they love them. You don't know them by that. You'll know them by how loud they pray. He don't say that. He says you will know them by their fruit. So I know they got charisma. I know they fooled me a time or two, or 3 or 4. They fooled me a lot of times. They preach that feel-good gospel. They play that organ and they get you to move it and not recognize that's part of what's in us. We were born with that. We're descendants that came from that. That voodoo, that E5, that's part of us. The YT people, when they showed up over there, we were doing our dances and stuff, and they thought what was natural for us, they thought it was supernatural to them. They know this. They've been studying us for a long damn time now. But what that fruit do? And if their fruit is fear, if it's confusion, if it's dependency, if it's shame, if it's contradiction and manipulation, Jesus says, don't ignore it. Do you see it now? How does it show up in your life? Because whatever keeps producing your life has become your teacher. And whatever your real teacher is, that's what you've given authority over you. So don't ask, do I believe it? Ask, what is it producing in me? In other words, how does it show up in my life? In the ancient Kemetic traditions, The heart was understood as the seat of conscious character and more discernment. The image of the heart leading symbolizes allowing truth, integrity, and balance, not impulse or fear, to guide your actions. Don't let fear, guilt, or shame, don't let your wounds lead. Let your heart examine the truth lead. Because your heart is supposed to question before you feel your feet commit to it. What religion skips, because it tells you just believe, just have faith, don't question, touch not my anointing. My aunt says examine all that shit. Weigh it, test it. And if you don't do that, it doesn't produce harmony. It keeps producing confusion and fear and dependency and contradiction. Why would you keep calling it God? What if growing up spiritually isn't learning how to believe more? What if learning how to examine better? Because the moment you become conscious of the language that forms you, you stop becoming a prisoner to it. And that's why every week I leave y'all with the same reminder. It doesn't start with your preacher. It don't start with the church. It doesn't start with God doing something new. It starts here, internal. Because the moment you change your language, you can change your life, family. I'm not telling you something that I lived it. I'm living it. And that's where freedom begins. So tonight, I've been asking one question: how much Jesus do you need? Not because I'm trying to make Jesus away from you. I'm trying to take it away from you. I'm asking because I want to know what has become alive within you. Because it's after all these years, you're still needing someone to tell you not to love, not to forgive, not to lie, not to steal, not to honor your word, not to care for your body, not to care for your mind, not to care for your neighbor. Then maybe the question isn't how much Jesus do you need, but how much of what he taught has become part of who you are. What happened to all the things that give you power? What happened to your dominion? What happened to you were more than conquerors? What happened to I could do all things through Christ that strengthened me? What happened? What happened to you are the light of the world, the salt of the earth? Look at the patterns. Language isn't codependency or what God will do. It's about what God has given you. Dominion, what God has given you. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And let me ask you something. If you've been walking with God for 20, 10, 5, 30 years, however it is, put yours in the chat. If you've been walking with God for so long and you still need someone to tell you not to lie, to cheat, not to mistreat people, not to gossip, not to manipulate, not to hate, not to love yourself, then maybe you got to go back to the drawing board. Y'all need to start over. Ask the pastor to take you back to the basics, because the math ain't mathing. If you spent your whole life walking this journey and you still haven't matured enough to not do those things, then don't ask what's wrong with God. Ask what's keeping you from growing. What's at the root of my spiritual infancy? What's at the root of my dependency? What's at the root of me still needing someone outside of me to regulate what should already be part of my moral character? Because the Bible doesn't keep pointing towards permanent childhood. It keeps pointing towards transformation, towards renewing of your mind, towards laws written on your heart, towards fruit, towards maturity, towards becoming the greatest and highest version of yourself. Now, let me tell you what happened to me. I'm about to get out of here in a minute. When I found balance, I didn't suddenly become perfect. I didn't mature right away. I became aware, and I'm learning how to speak the lingo. I'm learning how to speak the lingo to know that I can do all things through Christ. And Christ is not Jesus's last name. Christ is what you access within yourself to get to your highest version of yourself, to get to peace, enlightenment, to get to joy, to love, to all the things high vibrational. And I'm learning to speak that lingo. I'm learning that there's a time to speak and a time to remain silent, a time to embrace and a time to let go, a time to build and a time to tear down, a time to love and a time to hate, a time to hate to what destroys life. I stopped forcing myself to live one dimensional, one directional. Instead, I'm starting to examine my intentions, what it's creating. How can I get balance? How can I get to that harmony? How can I start producing life? And that's becoming my compass. Not fear, not guilt, not shame. And believe me, those things show up. So I'm going to be the last one to tell you that this thing is that those things are not going to show up, because the thing about enlightenment and being able to access those high frequency, you have the ability to come and go as you please. And that's what's changing me. Not because someone forced me to, but because balance became my nature. So I'm going to leave you guys with a question. I've been asking all night, one more time. How much Jesus do you need? Because if your answer is I need him for everything still, I want you to examine that, not reject it. Examine it. Does your life reflect a mature relationship or a dependent one? Has your walk produced greater wisdom, greater discernment, greater compassion, integrity, courage, balance, or are you still waiting? Are you still waiting for someone else to become what it is that you desire? And what you've been called to embody. Because maybe the greatest evidence that truth has been taken root isn't how loudly you proclaim it. It's how naturally you live it. It's in the experience. And maybe the greatest testimony isn't how many scriptures you can quote and you know by heart, but how you treat people when no one is watching. Maybe the greatest miracle isn't that someone rescued you. Maybe the greatest miracle is that you've become the kind of human being who no longer abandons yourself. And that's maturity. That shows that you don't need Jesus for that. That's transformation. That's dominion. And whether you call it walking with God, living in Christ, or living in balance, the evidence is the same. People should experience your character before they ever hear your confession. Because at the end of the day, the end of the day, it never starts with religion. It never starts with performing. It starts and it still starts. And Ty will tell you this until the end. It starts with you. So I'm going to close with a quote, family. I went a little bit over, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. The greatest prison is believing your power is always somewhere outside of you. The greatest freedom is discovering that what you've been seeking has been waiting to mature within you this whole time. And that's why Ty is going to say to you, it has always and will always start with you. Hotel.